Hello everyone, Vinod here. So we have a student from Northeastern University, one of my mentees, Kavin. Hey Kavin, welcome.
Hello.
So Kavin wanted some tips about how to apply for internships in the US, and I think it's a great opportunity since all first year students could benefit from this advice. So what I want everyone to remember is that in every college when you join, you probably join somewhere in August for the fall semester, right? And what happens is right after you join, 1 month later is typically around September, October is when the placement season begins. All these big companies, branded companies, Fortune 500 companies who want to recruit at different campuses begin to visit campuses during this time. So the best time to network, if you ask me, is that even if they do not come to your campus, October to December is the best time to network to the FANG companies or whatever the top tech companies, whichever you find interesting. When you touch, say, January, the window's beginning to close for at least the big companies. So by like February, March, most of these positions may have closed. But the opportunity which will still remain is that in many of these places, somebody may decide not to take up offers. That happens all the time. So by March, some of these big tech companies may have some spots open. Like nobody knows about this, but like spots open where people did not join, or they may have some increased hiring numbers and they're wondering last minute, hey, where do I go to now that the hiring cycle is frozen at most universities? What should I do to get more people? So that's a time when they begin to use referrals and networks in a big way. So if your target is a big company, I would say that by December, Jan, yes, most of the recruiting is over, but there's a small window which opens up around the period of like March to April, and the internships are going to begin around that May June period. Okay, so you are the March time period. I would say that aggressively network. Okay, so some of the tips I always give to students when you begin to reach out to recruiters is before doing networking, do some basic homework. So the homework begins with do not do this. I mean, I'm gonna shoot for like 100 companies using one resume. It is not gonna work. It's just not worth that effort. So what I recommend on the other hand is that you shoot for maybe 10, 15 companies, not more than that. But really be concise in the companies you shoot for. So now you're going to ask me, how do I identify companies? Okay, so this is where you got to begin doing your homework right from day one when you enter university. Is that begin to read up about university, about different companies, what work they do, what projects they're involved in. Okay, you should have a very good sense of what's happening. There is a website called teamblind.com, TEAMBLIND, Team Blind. They've got excellent data about companies. What each company is working on, what is the tech stack, what are the future strategy, which growth markets are they focused on. So you should be reading Team Blind. You should have a good opinion. Like you should read it every day, right? That's one simple data point to begin with. Check up this website called h1bdata.info. Kevin, have you checked that?
I have. I know about it.
H1bdata.info. Good. So I gave this tip to Kevin earlier. So it's like go to h1bdata.info. You'll find all the H1Bs filed in the last 4 to 5 years with compensation, the location, which company, and the year of filing. And even if you don't find the names, you get a wealth of data. And for example, if you are in say Boston, right, you want to find a job in Boston, you should know which companies are recruiting. Like that's the number one thing you need to know. Like, you can assume that all these companies in like Route 128 or near Boston, they are recruiting. You just don't know. Look at the data, and if they're not been recruiting the last 2 3 years, they're definitely not recruiting this year. Ideally, you want to shoot for companies who also recruited last year. They are the people
Mm.
most likely to recruit this year. Okay, so have a list of companies, and I would say drill down by your like by location, headquarters. Look at the best places to work surveys. Look at like there's some great places to work like GPTW rankings. There are a lot of rankings available online. Look at companies and try to understand like which are the ones which value the employees a lot more. You can also maybe check up. There's a website called layoffs.fyi. So who's laying off employees? So there's a trick involved here. So if a company has laid off people, right, what happens is by law you cannot recruit anyone for the next 6 months. So that's a
Oh,
tip which many students are not aware of. So, for example, if you're filing for H1B visa and the company has laid off people, then forget H1B filing for the next 6 months. Likewise, if they have fired people, it's very unlikely that they're going to be recruiting for positions in the next 6 months for the same positions. Okay, so companies have two models of recruiting. One is that they have like a software engineer, like a training program, right? They get people in, make them rise through the ranks. It's almost like in mechanical engineering, we used to have something called a graduate engineer trainee program. Likewise, people have a very structured, like a software engineer development program, right? That's a good way to enter many of these big companies. Or you basically want to apply for roles which demand like 0 to 1 year of work experience. Like if you have a master's degree, pretty much like you've been given credit of like 1 year of work experience. So you want to target those roles which demand 0 to 2 years of work experience in a company. And many of them tend to be backfills, which means that somebody has already worked in the role, left the company, now they want to backfill those positions. So you got to think about how do you want to target? Do you want to target the university hiring programs? Do you want to target the experience hiring programs? Okay, so that's one more target you want to do. Come up with a list of companies. Then ask yourself like, how much of my skills match to this company? So download the job description. Having done this work, Kevin, look at the job description, identify the skills, divide that under technical, business, and people skills, and ask yourself, do I match at least 70% of the tech skills? Like, if you don't match the skills, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to get hired in the company. Yeah. Any questions?
So a follow-up to that. So I have extensive experience in iOS development, and honestly, like I don't know, it probably doesn't matter in the US, but like I have experience in very good companies in India, in iOS development. I also have very good projects in it. So I'm quite well matched for any software engineering intern role in iOS development, which I would say honestly. So I have applied to about 5 or 10 of them. iOS is very niche, so you don't get a lot of roles in that. I have been rejected from 3 of them without for no reason, like for no apparent reason.
Okay, so I think you're entering a zone, Kavin, where you're probably really qualified for the role, but nobody's really looking at your resume. Nobody's seriously looking at your resume. And it happens all the time because I think there are probably 8 lakh Indians coming for master's degrees in the US, and most of them tend to be in computer science and electronics. And even electronics engineering students are going to apply for CS jobs. So I think there's just too many applicants, to be frank. Like one job posting, you have 3,000, 4,000 applicants, and this is absolutely what's going to happen, right? The HR recruiter does not have time to look at each one of the resumes. So this takes me back to the next step in the process, which is that you got to aggressively network. It's tough, man. Networking is probably the toughest thing which anybody does in their life.
I have been to a couple of networking events. Sorry to interject. I've been to a couple of networking events in Boston. Like, so the reason why we're attending in Northeastern and spending so much money in Boston is to actually be next to these companies and like these people who can actually hire you, right? You'd just go to say California State Chico if you didn't want to do any of these things. So I've been to like a couple of universities, networking events in Boston, and I actually talked to a lot of people. But there's like this very I don't know how to put it, but there is a certain gap. uh I don't know, like a couple of people have been very receptive. Most people aren't receptive, and I feel like it's a complete hit or miss or on whether they are like hiring or not hiring. So I don't know, honestly.
Okay, so I think you're facing two problems. One is that there's too many students out there. Everybody's pretty much saying the same stuff. Like, I mean, Kevin, you may be a little better than the other students because of your work experience, but ultimately, right, many people are very similar in nature. Like, all of you
I feel
need
like
H1B
there's so many people
sponsorship.
better than me also. So like
That's true. Okay, I get it. I get it. Okay, so the thing is, all of you need H1B sponsorship. And H1B is such a taboo topic in the US right now. It's like the H1B, the fees has increased. There's so much uncertainty around, is there going to be clamps on the H1B program overall, right? There's just so much uncertainty that everybody's a little leery of like, hey, what's going to happen in the future? Like, is that going to be cut down? If it's cut down, the companies are going to take a huge hit. Like, they're going to invest a lot in like the sponsorship. And then it's like, hey, what happens then? I mean, if this person doesn't work with us, then there's no use of having hired this person in H1B. So I think there are a lot of questions. Of what I'm trying to say is that they really want to make sure that if they do hire, they bet on the people they know best, right? And most of them will be referrals at the end of the day. Okay. Yeah. So when you're talking to people, just remember that like it's a strange conversation where you have everything to gain and they have nothing to gain from talking to you. I know it's tough, right? As a student, you're like wondering like, what can I do to make the equation look better? But this is one of the tips I gave yesterday to another student who asked me a similar question, which is that do your homework and let the homework do the speaking. Okay, so if you prep, you have a more detailed conversation that will definitely impress recruiters. The number one problem with recruiters, everyone says, hey, get me a job. I'm ready for a job, get me a job. But the problem is, why you, right? I mean, there got 1,000 other people who are also looking for the same exact thing. Kevin, you saying
So
something?
yes. So okay, let's like practically put this out. Like I'll just ask you for some concrete advice on this. So I'm going for a hackathon at NYU this
Okay.
weekend, and Google is the organizer, and they have explicitly told us that the recruiters will be there. So what do I do to get noticed?
Yeah, so this is the thing, right? So a couple of things. You know all about Google, that specific space you want to be in, whatever it is, right? For example, if it's Android development, right? Read up about Android development, right? Like surf the net. Like, like I would say the best thing you can do, if you ask me, right? If you have a recruiter, if you are sure you're going to meet a recruiter, give them like a 10 to 20 page report without using chat gpt or artificial agi, right, where you have some analysis about what's happening within the company and where you think that you can add value. This thing is almost impossible, nobody is ever going to do it, but if you get this done, I'm telling you, people will notice you, take you extremely seriously.
A 10 to 20 page report, like in hard, like a hard copy?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
That's dedication, man. That's like, you do that, it'll make you stand out from all the 1,000 other applicants. You're the only person who's done that work. So I'm just saying, if you're dead serious about the company, do your homework. Okay. So what I mean to say is, read up about the company, look at their quarterly reports, annual reports. There are a lot of very good stuff listed there in simple language. Read up. Go to blind.com, check up about what's happening in different teams. I mean, even if it's not 20-page report, create a 5-page report, 10-page report, but please do not use artificial like chat GPT tools and AGI tools, because you have to put in your homework. So they'll ask you questions. Where did you get this data from? If you're not done your homework, cannot answer these questions, right? So you have to have some perspective, right? Like, you can say the recruiter may look at it and say, "Hey, this is all bunkum nonsense," or like, "Oh, this is not correct." But still, what they're going to appreciate is that before even coming for interview or before even being considered for a role, you already put in so much effort. Now that speaks a lot of volumes. So every recruiter wants people who are enthusiastic, interested, and willing to work hard. And that is exactly what you're going to exhibit by doing some of these things. Create a
yeah,
report.
no
Like
one's
I've
gonna
seen,
do that.
like
Yeah.
this is a tip I've given to MBA students to help find a job, which is like even more difficult because they're high paying jobs, very high paying jobs after MBA. And I tell them that always create a report on the company, be a subject matter expert, right? Like, but please, like, if the moment it looks like a chat GPT generated report, that's it, right? You lost all credibility. Just be extremely careful about how you want to put in that homework yourself. And even if you create a 5-page report, 10-page report, if you've done that homework, the answers you give, the questions you ask is going to be very, very different from other people. So the more you prepare, the more people are going to notice you. Okay, that's point one. Second thing I would recommend is network in advance. Message people working in the company. And see, when you message people and you're trying to network, the number one question, again, they are going to think in their mind is, why should I talk to Kevin? What's in it for me? Like, you have to sell yourself, and selling yourself cannot come by just talking about how awesome you are, right? You got to really talk about how is it you're going to help them in whatever they are doing. Okay, so for
And that
example,
comes from knowing about them, right?
you invest time in them, right? Like you try to understand what the other side wants. For example, as a simple example, when I interviewed once at General Mills, I knew a certain recruiter was going to be there. Okay, so I looked at their social media profile. I looked at some of the videos. I let them know during the interview process they have looked at a YouTube video, and she was like super super happy on hearing that. Like, nobody has ever told her that they've watched a video, but somebody's taken the effort to watch the video. And I did ask her 2 3 leading questions based on that video I watched in terms of some of the questions I had. She was super happy to answer those questions. The moment I talked to her and I gave that example and she was gleaming with happiness, I knew I was in. I mean, this is an example from a long time back, but what I'm trying to say is that if the people have a LinkedIn profile, like a Twitter profile, if they have, like, I think the best two profiles to look at, not Instagram, but maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, they tend to be kind of like semi-official, official stuff. So
Yep.
read up stuff, see if they are like network with them in advance, leave a comment on their social media for 1 or 2 months before you reach out to them. They should remember you, right? Only then the buy-in happens. Like, I know Mark Cuban always checks up the social media. There are innumerable examples of people who have met him after messaging him on Twitter. But he takes it very seriously, right?
Right.
So even people like Michael Dell, Mark Zuckerberg, they all have responded to social media comments and like interacted with people and had, I mean, people are able to like absolute newbies have been able to have like 5-10 minute conversations with them. This is almost impossible for anyone to get done, right? Like, but it's happened. What I'm trying to say is that don't underestimate the power of like spending time on the other person. If they have a profile, if they have some presence, right? Read up. The more time you invest in them, then they'll feel obligated to talk to you. So, Kamin, one of the reasons why I talked to you in the first place is that you told me that you watched most of my videos on Career Bolt, and I was like, wow, wow, this guy's taking the time to like do this. So I owe it to him to at least have a conversation and answer his queries. So that's the way I approached it. And I'm sure everyone has a feeling of reciprocity when you do some effort from your end. Without doing that effort, right? You just say, "Hey, I want to spend half an hour with you." Why should I spend half an hour with some random guy? Like, I have nothing to gain by talking. Like, not just me. I'm just saying any recruiter will think like, "What do I gain by talking to this guy?" Nothing. So
Right.
create that buy-in, right? And how you create buy-in is up to you. You got to do the homework, and you basically are now getting into the realm of selling yourself, which is sales, right? And sales is this way. Every business runs on sales, and sales is cold calling. The old-fashioned way, by the way, works. If you have an alumni registry in your college, try to get that. Get the phone numbers of people that could be listed in the registry. Call them directly. Message and then call them. Sounds very bad, like, but everybody in the US does it all the time. It's like India, people have stopped cold calling directly, but US it still works. So get their
Really?
numbers, message them, hey, I'm a student, I got this number, and but please do homework before you talk to them. You must tell them at least 3-4 things they should love to hear from you, or about how you can add value. There has to be something there. If not for them, how are you going to help the company go forward, right? You can talk
Yeah.
about best practices in other companies, competitors, what they're working on. Show passion, show interest. Like everything can be taught. The only thing which cannot be taught is passion. You should be like bubbling with enthusiasm. If that happens, they'll forget everything else. Even if your technical skills don't match, your people skills are just average, it doesn't matter. They'll still bet on you because that sheer enthusiasm matters a lot for these people.
Hmm. That's a very interesting take. Honestly, I've never heard this part before. People just tell me to apply, and do all these things, but no one ever has said that you need to like, sell yourself to them. And the whole document thing, I think I'll put that into practice with the Google Recruiter thing on this weekend. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah. So I mean, like you see, I can get you connected with multiple recruiters, right? Across Meta, Amazon, so on. But the thing is, why will they take the conversation forward? They're not going to take it conversation forward just because um, like Vinod referred a friend to them, right? For them, it's like, how does it matter to them, right? Like if Vinod is applying for a job, it's different. But then Vinod referring a friend is something very different. So
Yeah.
it's like they have to see value out of this conversation. And
Yeah.
the more time you invest, that value is gonna rise, right? I mean, I'm gonna ask you if a student from like 10th grade messages you say, hey, I want to talk to you for like 1 hour. You'll be like, why the hell should I talk to this kid for 1 hour? Right? That's the natural human reaction, right? You're not gonna talk. Like you'll be asking, so what's in it for me? And it's a tough question because there's nothing much you can offer to a recruiter at this point of time, but definitely you can offer your enthusiasm, you can offer best practices, you can offer industry knowledge, you can offer them tips about like how to like write like maybe some coding practices which they never heard of. So just be ready with 2-3 bullet points, right? When you meet a recruiter, you got to sell yourself in 1 minute. So practice an elevator speech, very, very important. So I think Indians love to like to talk for like 15, 20 minutes if they're not careful, and then everybody's zoned out and nobody's listening to you anymore. Quick, like talk quickly about yourself, introduce yourself quickly, and you want to show enthusiasm. Ask them questions, get them involved, or like reel them in. Ask them 2-3 questions about what's happening in that space, what's happening across competition, where are they recruiting at, what are the hiring plans, what is some of the business strategy. Tell them they have reached out to like 5 people in your company so far, already had conversations. Now that's super impressive. In an
Yeah.
interview, you're telling the recruiter that I already talked to 5 people in your company. That means that you put in that effort. You're not an average guy talking to that company. You're somebody who's very different. So again, it's effort coming as simple as that, right? I mean, this is not like a textbook formula, right? You really have to go outside the boundaries, do things very differently. It will work out because that shows your enthusiasm.
I feel like this is very, people say that in India also it's very important to network, but I feel like over here it's that much more because in India, I don't know, for some reason, it was way easier for me to land a job.
Yeah, yeah. The entire campus recruiting model is different in US versus India.
No, I
In
actually applied off campus for.
Yeah,
Zomato.
yeah. I mean, India, a little bit of like recruiters still come to campus, right? I mean, that model is. I mean,
Yeah, of
nobody
course.
recruits in US from campuses, right? Everyone has to apply to the same job posting, and everyone is going to be considered together. Like some recruiters may come to IIT Bombay and just open it up only to IIT Bombay students and select from there, right? That doesn't happen in the US.
Yeah,
It's
right.
always going to be open to every student across all of US. So I
Hmm.
think that's a challenge. I mean, you may get a preference, but you're part of the common pool. You're not part of a smaller, closed niche group.
I had a like so I sometimes this is I think it's a very straightforward. Honestly, I feel like it's not a very smart question, but like whenever recruiters, sometimes I get emails, rejection emails from recruiters. Like, can I do something
No, it's
in
all
that?
automated. Most of them are automated responses.
No,
Just don't
like
take it too seriously.
it's not no reply. Like actual recruiters who have LinkedIn's are sending me rejection emails. Like I know the difference between like a no reply and like an actual recruiter doing that, right? That means they have actually reviewed my resume. So
So
is
I
there
mean, this
like
just means that you are just like there are a lot of people like you. All that's all it means. I mean, this is something you cannot control, right? Like you can't
right?
control the quality of people who are also competing for the same jobs. Maybe there are a lot of people with work experience. Like I know many people now that the dollar is kind of like appreciating, right? Everybody now is like, hey, let me go and work in the US and make money, right? That's been the attitude of most people. So you will face a lot of competition from people with like 4 years of work experience, 5 years of work experience. So I'm just saying, just means that like there are a lot more people. But when a company is hiring for a fresh position, work experience beyond 2 years is not going to help. It could end up hurting the person because many of the entry level roles, they want people who already not been trained in the coding practices from other companies. Very difficult to train someone from scratch
Yeah.
in a certain business model, in a certain culture, if you already come in with a set of like pre-established points of view. So ideally, they want to work with people who have little to no work experience. It's like a little bit like marketing. Like Unilever, for example, they do not touch people with work experience. That's what I heard long time back. Like they want people who have like uncorrupted, right? Like who just come in with a blank slate, are willing to learn. So, so I think companies are actually very open to people with work experience. But the thing is that since people have like you just graduate from college, maybe have some part-time experience and so on, and there are probably a lot of people like you. So I think using this strategy of like becoming more enthusiastic than other people, doing your
That's
homework,
the best
I
option for
think
me.
that's really the way it's going to work out. And you cannot apply for 100 companies this way. It has to be something like maybe 5, 10 companies. That's really all you can manage. It's just too much work for you otherwise.
Yeah, of course. And also going for the network, like these events, it takes money, it takes effort, so
Yes, yes.
like going to New York, coming back, it's a lot of effort.
It is tough. So I would say that be like just don't try to meet every recruiter in a campus fair, in a recruiter fair. Just try to be targeted in terms of like
Right.
do your homework,
Right.
H1B data or info. Look at who's recruiting. Only go to places you recruit. Don't waste your time with other places. Like for
Yeah.
example, there could be companies, for example, Palantir and so on. They probably will not hire anybody with an H1B. They want somebody with a green card.
Yeah. So, another follow-up question to this. So right now there is a role that just opened like yesterday, in the Bay Area for an iOS developer intern. I completely match that role. Like I fulfill like all the recommended requirements that they want. They want a native iOS developer. I am very enthusiastic about this role. I read about the company. I actually tried to send a connection request to like one of the people that work there, who is also from Northeastern University. How could I maybe go about something like this and like maximize my chances of actually getting through to that person and them not just looking at me like, who's this guy? Like a 10th standard kid.
Spend time on him. I like try to dig up something about like there's just something more than just the Northeast. I think that's a good way to connect. Like some people just respond because alumni connection. I would say like 20% of people respond, but then something else has got to stand out, right? It could be something like you read something or something they work on, some technologies they work on. That has to be one more connection. Try to find that connection. I think that's going to help. I would highly recommend you not apply to Bay Area based positions because most companies are downsizing in the Bay Area. It's one of the most
They
highly
also
paid.
have an office in NYC, so I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. So I'm just saying that the role you apply for is ideally should got to be in NYC or Boston with the best roles for you because firstly, they're not going to pay relocation. They have to pay relocation if they get somebody from outside. They don't want to pay relocation, firstly. Second point is that cost of hires in Bay Area has gone up so high that now they're trying to lay off everyone as much as possible, move them across the country.
oh
So if they take you, they're going to go against the grain. So again, that's one more thing about like not applying for Bay Area jobs right now. once you do well, you have some work experience. The company itself may move you to the Bay Area. Now that's a different thing altogether. But right now, getting straight into the Bay Area as a fresher is going to be incredibly difficult.
Okay. Even if you're like attending college there, like as SJSU or
Now that's a
something.
different, right? Like it's like if you're going to SJSU, then they don't need to pay relocation. Now that's a different conversation altogether. And the second thing is that these companies have relations to build with the local universities, and that's a fight given to them from the CEO's office. They have to recruit from local colleges. They've got to give back to the local community. So this hiring from local colleges is a way of giving back. Now that's
I
a
see.
different conversation altogether.
Okay,
But
okay, okay.
that
I
only
see.
applies to people in that region, and not people who, for example, you're studying in Colorado Boulder or whatever, right? You're going to Washington, in Seattle, University of Washington. I mean, it still will not apply because that's not the local community for the CEOs based in the Bay Area.
Right. I mean, that's about it, honestly, what I had on like networking and applying. The whole thing with like being enthusiastic is something I have to work on, obviously. Right now, what I've been doing is, tailoring my resume and like applying to jobs I'm fit, like I at least fit like maybe 50% of the keywords that they have.
Okay.
And just been applying, for 60, 70 jobs like that.
So do
So
two things. Watch my course. I mean, I talk a little deeply about this if possible. It's 10
the
hours of lectures,
NPTEL course, right?
NPTEL course, right? Please watch
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know.
I talk about skill gap analysis, and I think the match should be closer to 70%. So just be thoughtful about it. And if in case you don't match, then come up with a game plan of how is it you're going to increase your skill level. And the different ways you can get it done: internships, projects, by reading books, by
I
taking
feel like
courses
the courses
online.
I'm taking in Northeastern are upskilling me really, really well. So
No, it's good. But again, there are two things. One is academic exposure, which is fantastic. But unfortunately, academia is not always tied in with what industry wants. It's always a
right,
disconnect. So be
right.
thoughtful. Just taking a lot of courses at university will not make you industry ready always. So think about what industry wants and rework backwards. I think that's always more helpful. So think about that
Thank you.
plan and do the skill analysis. Make sure that you get your match up to like 70 to 80%. And then your chances are going to go up dramatically. And remember, this game is tough. Even the best CEOs of Silicon Valley today, they all had terrible times when they were students themselves. And they all went through like I heard in one case that one he went through like 200 rejects before he got his first call. And it happens all the time. These sort of like horror stories. So just saying that
So
don't, yeah. Okay, Kavin,